January 5, 1943, the Solomon Islands. USS Helena fires 12 anti-aircraft shells at a formation of Japanese bombers. 4 bombers explode in flames. 2 more limp away, trailing smoke. The entire engagement lasts 90 seconds. The Japanese survivors radio back to Rabaul. American flak has become impossible. German intelligence monitoring Allied communications dismisses the reports as propaganda. Self-guiding anti-aircraft shells, absurd. But the math doesn't lie, and the math is about to rewrite every assumption both Axis powers held about naval air defense. Because you do not shoot down aircraft you cannot see. This was absolute doctrine in 1942. Every anti-aircraft gunner, every naval commander, every military strategist accepted it as immutable fact. To destroy an enemy aircraft, your shell had to detonate within a lethal radius, typically 30 feet, of the target. The problem? Aircraft move at 300 miles per hour. Your shell travels for several seconds before reaching altitude. By the time it arrives, the aircraft has moved, so you aimed where you predicted the target would be. You calculated lead angles, altitude, speed, deflection. And you missed. Over and over and over, you missed. The numbers were brutal. In 1941, Allied anti-aircraft batteries fired an average of 2,500 rounds to destroy one enemy aircraft, 2,500 shells. Think about what that means. 2,499 explosions that accomplished nothing except wasting ammunition, barrel wear, and crew fatigue. The German Luftwaffe knew this. Japanese naval aviators knew this. They understood that if they stayed above 15,000 feet and maintained evasive maneuvers, Allied flak was primarily theatrical. Lots of smoke and noise, minimal danger. Time fuses were the only option. You set the fuse to detonate at a specific altitude, say 18,000 feet, and hoped the aircraft would be nearby when it exploded. But if the bomber climbed or dove, your shell exploded uselessly in empty sky. The mathematics were unforgiving. The sky is vast. Aircraft are small and fast. Explosions are brief. The probability of a direct hit or near miss was microscopic. Every air force accepted this reality. Anti-aircraft fire was defensive harassment, not an effective weapon. Real air defense required fighter aircraft, pilots hunting pilots. But in January 1943, one American scientist and one revolutionary fuse changed everything the Germans thought they understood about anti-aircraft warfare. His name was Merle Anthony Tuve. Born 1901 in Canton, South Dakota, son of Norwegian immigrants. Physics PhD from Johns Hopkins. By 1940, he was already recognized as one of America's most brilliant experimental physicists. His work on radio wave propagation and nuclear physics had earned international respect. When war came, Tuve didn't wait for a draft notice. He volunteered to lead Section T of the National Defense Research Committee. His mission? Develop proximity fuses for anti-aircraft shells. The concept was elegant, but seemed impossible. Instead of a time fuse that detonated at a predetermined altitude, create a fuse that could detect when it was near an aircraft and detonate automatically. A shell that could sense its target and decide when to explode. The challenges were overwhelming. First, size. The fuse had to fit inside a 5-inch anti-aircraft shell. That meant cramming a radio transmitter, receiver, amplifier, and detonation circuit into a space smaller than a soup can. Second, durability. When a 5-inch gun fires, the shell experiences 20,000 Gs of acceleration, 20,000 times the force of gravity. For 0.002 seconds, every component inside that shell experiences pressures that would crush most electronics into powder. Third, reliability. The fuse had to survive being stored for months, fired from a gun, spin at 500 revolutions per second as it climbed through the air, distinguish between an aircraft and clouds or ocean waves, and detonate at precisely the right moment, all without any maintenance or testing after leaving the factory. Fourth, secrecy. If one proximity fuse fell into enemy hands unexploded, German scientists could reverse engineer it. Every fuse had to either detonate or destroy itself. No exceptions. The project began in 1940. By late 1942, Tuve's team at Johns Hopkins had prototypes. They tested them over the Chesapeake Bay, firing at target drones. The results were promising, but needed battlefield validation. The U.S. Navy agreed to conduct the first combat test. The location, the Solomon Islands. The date, January 5, 1943. The stakes were existential. If the VT fuse worked, it could shift the balance of naval air defense. If it failed, or worse, if one fell into Japanese hands unexploded, the entire program would be cancelled, and America would have wasted millions of dollars on useless technology. Tuve knew this. Every engineer who'd worked on the project knew this. They'd spent 2 years solving problems that seemed unsolvable. Now their invention would face the only test that mattered: combat against an enemy who wanted to kill the men using it. December 1942. The Solomon Islands. The heavy cruiser, USS Helena, receives a shipment of shells marked with red bands. Her crew doesn't know what makes these shells special. They're told only that these are experimental ammunition and to record the results of every shot fired. Her anti-aircraft director is Lieutenant Commander John Jack Chu. He's fought through the Guadalcanal campaign, watched Japanese bombers tear through American formations, seen good men die because flak couldn't stop determined attackers. He inspects the new shells. They look identical to standard 5-inch rounds, except for those red bands. The fuses appear slightly different, more complex, with what looks like a small propeller on the nose. The armorers brief him. "Sir, these fuses are classified. You fire them like normal shells. They'll detonate automatically near the target. Don't ask how. Just report what happens." Jack has commanded anti-aircraft batteries long enough to be skeptical. Automatic detonation near the target? That sounds like wishful thinking. He's fired thousands of rounds at enemy aircraft. He knows the odds, but orders are orders. Helena loads the VT-fused shells into her forward 5-inch mounts and waits. January 5th, 1943, 1847 hours. Radar contact, bearing 310 degrees, range 35 miles, multiple aircraft, speed 180 knots, altitude unknown, but estimated 12,000 feet. Japanese bombers, probably Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers, the ones the Americans call flying Zippos because they burn so easily when hit. But they carry torpedoes or bombs, and they're heading straight for the American task force. Helena's klaxon screams. General quarters. Her crew scrambles to battle stations. Gun crews load shells, the ones with red bands. Fire control radars lock on to the incoming formation. Range, 25 miles. And watches the radar scope. 12 contacts, maybe more. They're not evading. They're coming straight in, probably hoping to catch Helena and her escorts before sunset provides cover. Range, 15 miles. All mounts load VT-fused shells. Stand by to engage. The 5-inch guns elevate. Fire control computers calculate lead angles, altitude, deflection. The solutions feed into the gun directors. Range, 12 miles. The Japanese bombers are visible now, black dots against the darkening sky, flying in a loose V formation. They're at 10,000 feet. Not high enough to be safe, not low enough for a torpedo run yet. They're closing. Range, 10 miles, 18,000 yards. Commence firing. The forward 5-inch mount roars. One shell. It arcs into the sky, trailing smoke. The shell climbs. 5,000 feet, 7,000 feet, 9,000 feet, spinning. The small propeller on the fuse spinning faster, generating electricity, powering the tiny radio transmitter inside. The transmitter sends out a continuous radio wave. The receiver listens for reflections. As the shell climbs toward the bomber formation, the signal bounces back stronger, stronger, stronger. At 9,800 feet, 70 feet from the lead bomber, the proximity fuse detects the reflection threshold. An electrical signal fires. The detonator triggers. The shell explodes. From Helena's bridge, Jack sees a black puff of smoke appear directly in front of the lead bomber. The aircraft flies into the fragmentation pattern. Its right engine erupts in flames. The bomber rolls, trailing smoke, and begins a death spiral toward the ocean. The 5-inch mount fires again and again. Each shell climbs into the bomber formation. Each shell seems to know where the aircraft are. Explosions blossom precisely where they need to be. Not above the bombers, not below, but right there, in the formation, shredding aluminum and cutting through control cables. A second bomber explodes in midair. Direct hit. The VT fuse detonated so close that the shrapnel ignited the bomb load. A third bomber breaks formation, trailing fire from the port wing. It tries to limp away. Another 5-inch shell chases it. The proximity fuse detonates 50 feet behind the aircraft. Shrapnel tears through the tail section. The bomber pitches forward and plummets. The Japanese formation disintegrates. The bombers that survive scatter, jettisoning their ordnance early, turning away, fleeing at maximum speed. Helena has fired 12 VT fuse shells, 4 bombers destroyed, 2 more damaged and fleeing. In 90 seconds. Jack grabs the intercom to the fire control director. What the hell are these shells? No one answers. No one knows. They just know they work. January 13th, 1943. 215 hours. USS Helena is part of a task force escorting transports to Guadalcanal when radar picks up another raid. This time, it's larger. 24 aircraft, a mix of bombers and fighters. The Japanese have learned about Helena. They've received reports about impossibly accurate flak. Their commanders dismiss it as exaggeration. Combat stress makes gunners overestimate their effectiveness, but the raid leader orders a high-altitude approach. Stay at 18,000 feet. Stay fast. Make one pass and break. Helena loads VT fused shells, every 5-inch mount, 16 guns, range 20 miles. The Japanese formation comes in fast. They're not following standard attack doctrine. They're too high, too cautious. Something has made them nervous. Range 15 miles. All mounts commence firing. 16 guns fire in sequence. A ripple of thunder. 16 shells climb toward 18,000 feet. The fire control radars track the formation. The guns adjust, compensate for wind, temperature, target speed. The Japanese see the muzzle flashes. They begin evasive maneuvers. A mistake. Turning at 18,000 feet bleeds energy, slows you down, makes you a better target. The first shell detonates, then the second, then A string of explosions march through the formation like deadly flowers blooming in sequence. A bomber breaks apart. Another loses half its wing. A third goes into a flat spin. The Japanese fighters try to suppress Helena's guns. They dive, strafing. But now, the 40mm Bofors mounts join the fight, their tracers arcing upward, and the 5-inch guns keep firing, keep climbing, keep exploding exactly where they need to. 3 minutes, 24 VT-fused shells, 8 aircraft destroyed, 5 more damaged. The Japanese formation retreats. What's left of it? 11 aircraft limp back toward their bases at Rabaul. In the after-action report, McFarland writes, "New ammunition exhibits extraordinary effectiveness. Request more immediately. Previous anti-aircraft doctrine may require revision." February 1943. The Solomons. Word spreads through the fleet. Helena has something. Some new weapon that makes Japanese raids suicide. Other cruisers request the red-banded shells. Destroyers want them. Even battleships ask for a supply. But the VT fuse is still classified top secret. Production is limited. Only select ships receive them, and those ships are ordered. Do not fire VT fuses over land. Do not fire them where the enemy might recover an unexploded shell. Water only. Deep water. The restriction makes sense. One captured fuse, and Germany or Japan could learn how it works, could develop countermeasures, could reverse engineer their own version. So the fuses go to ships engaged in naval battles. The places where every shell either hits the target or sinks into the Pacific. 2 miles deep, impossible to recover. March 1943. USS Montpellier, Cleveland-class light cruiser, engages Japanese raid near Guadalcanal. She fires 42 VT-fused shells. Result: 13 aircraft destroyed or damaged. Her executive officer's report includes the line, "It is my opinion that these proximity fuses represent the most significant advance in anti-aircraft warfare since the invention of the anti-aircraft gun itself." April 1943. USS San Francisco destroys 7 Japanese bombers in 4 minutes using VT ammunition. The Japanese pilots radio back to base. American flak has become impossible. Request different approach. But there is no different approach. High altitude, VT fuses reach you. Low altitude, 40mm Bofors and 20mm Oerlikon guns shred you. Medium altitude, you're in the worst possible zone. Both proximity-fused 5-inch shells and automatic weapons can hit you. The Japanese start avoiding American task forces equipped with the new ammunition. Raids decrease. When they do come, they're smaller, more cautious, less effective. German intelligence in the Pacific hears reports. Americans have developed self-guiding anti-aircraft shells. The reports are dismissed as impossible. Radio-controlled fuses, in a spinning shell, fired from a gun, surviving 20,000 Gs of acceleration. Absurd. Obviously Allied propaganda to demoralize Axis pilots, but the kill ratios don't lie. Before VT fuses, 2,500 rounds per aircraft destroyed. After VT fuses, 150 rounds per aircraft destroyed. Think about that, from 2,500 to 150. The VT fuse made anti-aircraft fire 16 times more effective. If you find this kind of forgotten innovation as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of genius and sacrifice deserve to be told, and by subscribing, you help ensure they aren't forgotten. June 1944. The Marianas Turkey Shoot. The VT proximity fuse finally enters large-scale combat during the Battle of the Philippine Sea. American carriers faced the largest Japanese air raid of the war, 373 aircraft. The U.S. fleet has radar, fighter cover, and thousands of VT-fused anti-aircraft shells. The result is slaughter. American fighters and anti-aircraft fire destroy 315 Japanese aircraft in one afternoon. The VT fuses account for a significant portion. Ships report impossible accuracy. Bombers falling from the sky in flames before they can even reach attack range. The Japanese call it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. They lose so many experienced pilots that Japan's naval aviation never recovers. German observers monitoring Allied communications finally intercept enough reports to believe it. The Americans have something new, something that makes their anti-aircraft fire catastrophically effective. German intelligence designates it Jarrett press device, and orders all units to recover any unexploded American anti-aircraft shells. They offer rewards. They send technical teams to scour battlefields. They never find one. Dr. Tuve's insistence that the fuses only be used over water has worked. Every VT-fused shell either detonates or sinks into ocean depths beyond recovery. What the Germans didn't know, what they wouldn't discover until after the war, was that the VT proximity fuse did more than just shoot down aircraft. It changed strategic calculations. The German V-1 flying bomb campaign against England in 1944 was supposed to be unstoppable. The V-1 flew low, fast, and in unpredictable patterns. British fighters could intercept some. Anti-aircraft guns could hit a few, but most would get through. That was the German calculation. Then Britain deployed VT-fused anti-aircraft shells around London. Suddenly, 79% of V-1s that reached the defensive belt were destroyed. 79%. The weapon Hitler had promised would bring England to its knees became an expensive fireworks show. The Wehrmacht's plans for using massed bomber formations to support the Battle of the Bulge were abandoned when intelligence reported American anti-aircraft units had automatic proximity shells with impossible accuracy. Japan stopped launching large-scale air raids against American naval task forces. The cost became unsustainable. Skilled pilots were too valuable to waste on missions where American flak destroyed formations before they could attack. The proximity fuse didn't just shoot down aircraft, it grounded them. Dr. Tuve's team at Johns Hopkins had produced over 22 million VT fuses by war's end. 22 million. Each one a miniature radio transmitter, receiver, amplifier, and detonator that could survive being fired from a gun and autonomously decide when to explode. After the war, German scientists examined captured VT fuses. Their conclusion: this represents a level of miniaturization and reliability we believed impossible. If we had known the Americans possessed such technology in 1943, we would have revised our strategic bombing assessments. Japanese engineers reached similar conclusions. The proximity fuse rendered conventional anti-aircraft doctrine obsolete. No countermeasure could protect against a shell that detected its own target. The technology didn't stop with World War II. Modern surface-to-air missiles use descendants of Tuve's proximity fuse, the Patriot missile, the SM-6. Every air defense system that can sense its target owes a debt to the miniature radio inside a 5-inch shell that first flew over the Solomon Islands in January 1943. Dr. Merle Tuve never sought fame for the proximity fuse. After the war, he returned to basic physics research. He became director of the Carnegie Institution's Department of Terrestrial Magnetism. He studied the Earth's ionosphere, cosmic rays, nuclear physics, the fundamental questions that had driven him before the war interrupted. When asked about the VT fuse, he deflected credit to his team. "I had 800 engineers and scientists working on that project. Every one of them solved problems I couldn't. The fuse succeeded because brilliant people refused to accept impossible as an answer." He died in 1982, age 81, in Washington, D.C. His obituaries mentioned the proximity fuse, but most readers didn't understand what it meant. A radio fuse? For a shell? It sounds mundane, technical, boring. The engineers who built the fuses, men with names like William Shockley, Ralph Baldwin, James Van Allen, went on to create the space age, the transistor, modern electronics. The skills they learned, miniaturizing radios to survive 20,000 Gs, became the foundation for everything that followed. To this day, the VT proximity fuse is studied in engineering schools as an example of achieving the impossible under pressure. Students learn about the miniaturization challenges, the durability requirements, the security concerns, but they rarely learn about the men aboard ships like Helena who fired them in combat, who watched impossible accuracy turn their defensive fire into a weapon that made enemies flee. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing these forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state and tell us if someone in your family served. Thank you for ensuring that Dr. Merle Tuve and the 800 men and women of Section T do not disappear into silence. They, and the sailors who fired their invention into combat, deserve to be remembered.